McCalls Doll Dress D for American Girl 18-inch dolls. For anybody that hasn't watched any of our sewing videos, let me just show you some of the stuff that we've made already. This was my first doll dress, turned out super cute, right? And then for the current project, we had made the little top that goes with the outfit. And now we are going to make, I don't know if it's called a cami or the dress part, and we have that started. So for anyone who was following that project before and I had to drop off on it, I apologize, but we are going to start back up and we're going to try doing a live because I've noticed there's been a lot of interest in the sewing videos and I'm getting more of a live following as well. So let's just look at what we had finished on at the point in which we stopped. We had these straps, right? That little top part there. And we had cut out the panels, right? And then this is part, I have to remember what this part is for. It says, oh, okay, front facing. Very good. So today what I'd like to pick back up on is I would like to go ahead and start the darts. Yeah, this was the yoke. This was called the yoke. I'd like to start the darts. And let's just put this over there. We don't need those parts. Don't need that part. And let's get our camera set up on the tripod so that it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. Give me just a moment, bear with me. And let's go like this. So you can kind of see my, all right, maybe let's just go really flat. There we go. I think that's gonna work. All right. So the darts are important. It provides some shape. Here we go. If I move over here, then you can see it. Provides some shape. And we want to make sure they're an equal distance and the size that's recommended. So you can see here at the top, that's a pleat and that's a pleat. Call it darts. So I'm going to take, and this is the back, right? Because we have a center fold. So we're going to want to do this on both sides of the back. So we're going to do 2 pleats on this side and 2 pleats on this side. So let's go ahead and get those marked. And the way that's easiest for me to do this, and again, I'm not a pro, I'm somebody that tries to learn how to do things that I enjoy, and I don't let things that I don't know how to do stop me. I just keep trying until I figure it out. Some people are really into things like Wordle, and that's great for some people, but for me, I like to actually do things and make things. And hopefully that's providing my brain with enough stimulation for maturing healthily, right? All right, so I've got the pins marking the spot. Now I'm going to fold this over like this. And actually, I think I should do it this way. There we go. Nope, I want to do it this way. There we go. If you're new to sewing, always think twice. Make sure you have the directions right. The direction of the seam or how something goes together correct. That's one of the easiest things to make a mistake on. Okay, so we'll pin that one. And then let's do this one also. See how that's going to make it like this on this side? Let's pin this one too. And don't poke yourself. I usually do on a project. It's not the end of the world. Just make sure you get a band-aid if you poke yourself really good, right? You don't want to bleed on your fabric. That wouldn't be good. Okay. So we've pinned the sides here, so you can see what that's going to look like once we do a seam. Now let's go ahead and let's put the darts, or pin the darts on the other side, and we'll do all of our dart sewing at once on this panel. So I'm just going to flip this upside down like this, right, to match up to the other side. And that way I'll be able to see where I'm supposed to mark the pleats. So we're going to have our first one. There. And our next one right here. Just let me straighten that up a little bit. Okay. And we'll do one right here. I didn't quite get that good enough. Let's just move it over just a little bit. And the next one right here. All right, so you can see how I've pinned it at the top and how that matches up with the pleat markings on the pattern. And we're just going to do the same thing again. We're going to fold it over like this. And we'll pin it. And we'll put the second pin in there. Okay, so you can see how that's going to make a pleat right there, like that, right there. And now let's do the next one. Make sure your fabric's, I don't know, even when you do that. And there may be better ways of doing this. I find that the more I do something, the more I improve my technique. Okay, so you can see if we sew this now, we're going to have all these pleats. So we're actually ready to do some sewing. And move this out of the way. And I like to have a pair of these glasses. I call them cheater glasses, but they just basically magnify things. So if you have to thread your needle on your sewing machine and you're my age, you might appreciate a little magnification. So let's see. Yep, you can see my sewing machine. All right. And we're just going to make our darts. And you want them to be the same distance, the same length, right? And we don't want to sew over our needles tops. So I'm just going to go like this a little bit, and then go backwards to tie it off, and then go up to the top, and then go backwards to tie it off, just like that. Lift up, pull it out. And we'll take these two pins out, right? Where's our cushion? There we go, it's right there. So you can see the one that we just sewed right here. Looks like that. Looks like that. Now let's do the next one. I'm going to make them the same length, right? And about the same width. Let's go forward a little bit. And sometimes that happens. When that happens and the feet doesn't quite go forward for me, I think it's because of the sewing pin. So actually, since I have it marked where I want it to be, I'm actually going to take the sewing pins out since they are causing me a problem. Backwards a little. one might be just a little bit longer, but I think it's going to be just fine. Okay, so you can see now we've sewed 2 pleats, that one and that one. Now let's do the other 2. I think it's easier coming from the bottom up as far as dealing with the thickness of the needle and the thread plate. You just go a little forward and a little backward at the start and the end to tie off your thread. That way it doesn't unravel, right? And let's try it the same way on this one. That seemed to work so much better. Going from the bottom to the top. Let's get rid of our needles since those affect the feed and the thread plate. And let's cut our threads off. We want to have our sewing to be neat and tidy. And there we go. Let me pull this back so you can see better. So we have these nice, evenly spaced pleats. So this is the back. Now let's go ahead and do the front, right? And one other thing that I learned with doing these doll dresses, it's better to finish the edges of your fabric before you start sewing, because sometimes you think fabric isn't going to be a problem with raveling, but then it is, and it's a real pain to finish your edges after the fact. So just go ahead and finish your edges. Actually, let me hold this up for a minute so maybe you can see it better this way. There you go. You can see the pleats better this way, right? Oops, my camera doesn't like to be turned sideways. All right, let's get the next piece here. Now this is 2 panels, right? So let's get the part for the front. Now, actually, let me try moving over just a little bit. I think if we had a little more distance away from our camera, you would be able to see what I'm doing a little better. You can see I have a ton of thread back here. I actually really stocked up on thread during COVID, and just because I was worried about supply chain stuff with China. Let's see if we got a little better view there that way. I think we do. Okay. All right, we can see that we have the neckline on the front here and the pleats here. So let's go ahead and mark our pleats. I'm going to put this on the back side to make it a little easier. Let's mark our pleats. Try to get that straight. And if you don't get these perfect, it's not going to ruin your project, but just try to be as accurate as you can. Just gives it a better finished look. And you don't want the sizing to be off too much because you want it to fit your doll. So to tell you a little more about my project, we have some little people in our family that still like dolls, and so I am making them personalized doll dresses as part of their holiday gift, along with buying them an 18-inch doll just in case they don't have one. And then also we support a function called Bowl for the Cure. And the Bowl for the Cure is actually supporting a private entity that's doing support for cancer patients and cancer survivors. It's not the big Susan G. Komen. And if that's your foundation you love, no offense. Having come from a family of people that are cancer patients, we'll just say, some of them made it, some of them didn't. I'm sorry to say. I can't help but want to support this cause. And we're going to make a couple of doll dresses, and I have an embroidery machine. We're going to sew the cancer ribbon on them. I thought that would be a really nice touch. So that's another thing we're going to be doing. So I have a few doll dresses to make. And who knows, if they're popular enough, maybe I'll put some on eBay. Not sure, not a whole lot. I don't really have time to sew a bunch of doll dresses. All right, so the pleats are in position on this panel, and let's go ahead and put them on this panel as well. So I'm just holding the pattern behind the fabric so I can line up and see where the pleats are supposed to be. It just makes it easier. And then I'm pinning it. And then once I have it marked, I'm just folding it together to match up the pins, right? Like that. And then I'm pinning it on this side. And let's make sure that when we pin this, that our fabric is lined up. Appreciate you bearing with me today. I'm kind of new to learning how to use a tripod, and it's something I want to get better at, and thank you for your support. Appreciate that. And let's see, did I get that straight? Let's do that one more time. And grab our other pin. Okay, so now we open this up, we can see how our pleats are going to be on this one. And let's see how this one is. Yep, and that looks pretty similar on this one, so we're ready to sew. Let me adjust the camera and this, whoops, sorry about that. The camera and the sewing machine. Looks like you've got a good angle there, you can see. All right, let's do our pleats, and we found that starting at the bottom actually worked a lot better. Just make sure your head pins are out of the way. I want to sew over those. Okay, we're going to go forward. And we'll go backwards to tie it off. And then we'll take these pins out of the way so that it sews more evenly. That's the first one. Trim our threads. We want to do good work here with good finish work. And we'll do the next one. I'm a little over an inch down from the top of the fabric. It doesn't have to be perfect, just try to be as regular as you can. Trim our thread. All right, so now you can see we have our pleats right there. The first front panel, and now we're going to do the pleats on the second front panel. And I think let's do this side first. Just move our pin heads out of the way here. Don't want to sew over those. Let's think about this for a minute here. Okay, let's go this way. There we go. Well, that's a different direction. All right, you know what? I'm going to change the angle of these needles. Just go the other direction because it's kind of a problem for sewing. There we go, that's better. Trim our threads. Take these needles out. And we'll do this one. Last pleat on this outfit. So I think it's a last pleat anyway. Let's trim our thread. And now you can see we have nice pleats on this one as well. The next directions here. Right, so you can see up here at the top, we did our yoke and we have our pleats. So we want to pin our yoke to the front. I kind of feel like we should put the back and the front together first. Yeah, we actually want to stitch the front and the back sections together at the sides. And the facings are for the armholes, so we want to do that also. All right, let's do that first. Let's put our backs and fronts together, leaving one section open, and then add our facings before we attach the yoke. Okay, so this is simple, easy, right? And make sure you have your fabric facing in the right direction. So we want to put right sides together. Okay, and you can tell the little divot right there is where the arm's going to be, right? So line those parts up. Just pin it so the fabric stays together evenly on the edges. I'm drinking my tea here. Gotta love a good cup of tea. I like green tea. How about the rest of you? And hopefully when you get to the bottom, your edges line up evenly, but if they're slightly off, don't worry about it because we're going to hem this when we're done, right? So you can see we have one side pinned together. Now let's do the other side. Let's get this lined up, right? The armholes is the way to do it. And make sure your edges are lined up evenly. I really like this McCalls pattern. It has several doll outfits, and there are things that you can kind of mix and match too. So if you have a child in your life that you're wanting to make doll clothes for, it has a nice variety. And so far, all the fabric that I've been using for these doll dresses is scraps from other sewing projects. So that's one nice thing about sewing doll clothes, is you can use scraps for it, right? You don't have to spend a whole bunch of money, just use your scraps. Okay, and let's just double check how much of a seam allowance we have here. It's important for sizing. thinking it's about 1/4 inch. We'll look at this other part of the pattern. It's been a while since I picked this up. All right. Gotta love this small print. Okay, we are gonna do a little more than 1/4 inch. And let's bring our sewing machine over. And just back stitch and then go forward again to tie your seam off. And let's just see how our facing lines up with this arm sleeve, and that'll tell us if we judge this sizing correctly for the allowance. Move this back just a little bit there. Yes, so you got this right. You can tell by this facing. Very good. Let's do the other side. Let me make sure you saw that. Sorry, I'm still getting used to using a tripod. So you can see by the facing that we've got the armhole the right size, which means that we judged our seam allowance properly. You want everything to match up, right? Right, let's go ahead and do the other front and back side together. And sew with whatever speed you're comfortable with. I kind of find in between not super slow and not super fast to be the best for me. But everybody will have to decide what is right for them. Let's trim all of our threads, right? So now we have our front sewed to our back, right? And actually, this is the front, not the back. And the back, this will end up connecting back here. But for now, we are going to go ahead and pin in our facings for the sleeves. And we'll just put right sides together. See how I have that pinned? See if I can get that light a little better. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, you can see how that's pinned together there. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So we have, you can see the facing on both of the armholes. Let's go ahead and do a 1/4 inch seam allowance on that as well. Sew that together. Just kind of turn your fabric as you go as the machine's moving. Move your pins as you go. And then backspace to tie off your seam. All right. Cut your threads. And let's do the next armhole with the facing. And I started by going backwards and then forwards to tie off the seam. And I just keep rotating the fabric to follow the curve of the armhole. There we go. Let's cut our seams. And let's go ahead and get our pins out. And let's turn these like this, so you can see what I'm doing. This part's a little tedious, but it's not awful. Basically, we're going to turn it and we're going to do a seam to hold it all in place, right? Can you see how I'm turning this way? And you're going to have to pin it. You could also press it if you wanted. You're definitely going to want to pin this though, because you want it to hold in place when you do the seam. Ready? So I pinned the edges first, and I just pinned the center. That helps kind of get the rest of it to lay smooth. And then we'll put a few more pins in there. And you can kind of feel with your hands that you have it flat, right? Don't want any weird lumps. And our fabric to lay smoothly. And we can double check the back side to make sure that looks reasonably smooth before we do it. I just want to pull this fabric down a little bit more. We don't want to see the facing on the outside. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's do a little more on this side here. There, you can see how that looks on the other side. And let's do the other side, the other armhole. When you start sewing, when you first start sewing and doing these kind of things, you might be a little slow at it, but as you get used to reading patterns, you're going to find it gets a lot easier. So that looks pretty good. We're ready to go ahead and do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The more experience you have, the easier it gets. So don't be afraid to try, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? And the great thing about doll clothes is, like I said, you can use scraps, right? So you can use the scraps from some other project that you're doing. I actually find this McCalls pattern to be pretty forgiving. I haven't really had any problems. I've been able to finish every project that I've started. And something that I like about sewing is you can put it down, right? It's not like a living thing. It's not a garden. Things that are living, you can't put down. You have to stop anything to take care of it, right? Sewing is not that way. All right, let's cut our thread. Nice finished work. Remove our pins. So far I haven't stabbed myself with them, so that's good. And let's sew the other side. And let's cut our threads. Remove our pins. And let's look at the outside of this. You can see it's starting on to take on a little bit of shape. We are ready to attach our yoke. So let's take a look at that. Oops, I've gotten doll pattern pieces flying everywhere. All right. And I think we might need to make our pleats just a little bit bigger, because we want to be able to fit this over this section right here, right? So it's just a little bit too wide, but that is easy to fix. Let's just measure here and see how much difference we need to make up. So we have a little over a ½ inch on both sides. So we're going to take our pleats in just a little bit more here. That's not too hard. So we should have done about a ½ inch of width here at the top to come down narrow on each one. So let's just do that at this time. We'll pin each one as we go. All right. See, I made a mistake for you, and you can see how to fix it. looks nice. Let's do the next one. And actually, I don't even really need to pin this. I didn't cut my thread here. Let's do that. Just don't cut yourself. Just make sure the top is lined up, right? And we're going to start at the start point of the other seam, and then we're just going to go wider. So a little bit forward, a little bit back, tie it off. Reverse to close off your seam. Okay, that looks pretty good, I think. Let's make sure we get all our threads cut. Okay, I wasn't sure actually if you saw what I just did there. We just made our pleat a little smaller, right? Or actually the pleat's larger, but the distance of the fabric is smaller. So now we're going to do the other side. And we'll do the next one. Get rid of our extra threads here we don't want on there. And let's see how we did. Let's see if we got it right. At this point, we could just tuck it just a little bit on the edge here on the inside. We're going to pin this yoke in. You see what I'm doing here? The yoke is going to go on this part right here in the middle. Slide this way a little bit so you can see a little easier. And in the pattern, they slip stitch, but I am going to sew it with a machine. I am all about using a machine. And this is a little tedious getting this in here, but just go for it. You might just pin it to get it in there initially, and then you can adjust it once you get it tucked in, right? We want to get the amount of the dress that's tucked in the yoke to be an even amount so that our dress is straight, right? And you just kind of feel here, and just make sure that you have about the same thickness of the fabric where it's tucked in. Like this side I think needs to go a little deeper. I'm going to stop and take a look at it. You can see how this is starting to shape up a little bit, right? Okay, let's go ahead and do a seam. And don't worry about this edge right here because we'll put some ribbon on there, okay? That's how you take care of that. All right, let's go ahead and get our yoke. I'm so sorry. Let's go ahead and get our yoke attached to the front. Let's see if I can adjust this tripod a little bit here to keep it from tipping so easily. There we go. And in this case, I'm actually going to sew right on the edge of the seam. Close to the bottom. I'm going to sew close to the bottom edge of this yoke, right where it comes right along the dress part, just to make sure we have it anchored in good. These pins out. Let's take this pin out because I'm not going to be able to go backwards over the thickness of that seam. And let's see how we did. Cut our threads. And I'm just looking to make sure that we sewed through on the back side, right? We want it to be well attached on the front and the back. And we did. So you know what I didn't think about before we started was looking for our, we're going to use some bias tape. That'll be the easiest thing. And or some ribbon. That would be nice also. Ooh, that's kind of nice. That's red, right? Yeah, let's do that. Let's do some red. And I'm just going to tuck this over like this, right? Fold it over so we have a nice clean edge. And I'm going to pin it on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew the top edge of the ribbon and the bottom edge of the ribbon to make sure it's secured, right? And let's cut this too. Got to turn this edge over at the right distance, the right length, a little more. We will get this. Patience is a virtue. All right, this is going to work. And make sure you have the height of the ribbon the same on the yoke on both sides, okay? You hear that noise in the background? That's my little dog Meg. She's keeping me company. You want to say hi to Meg? Let's say hi to Meg. There's Meg. Hi, Meg. And okay, I think we're ready to sew now, all right? And working with this thin ribbon can be a little tricky. Just got to be patient. So to start, we're going to secure the side edge, right? So it doesn't slide on us. Just going to go a little forwards and a little back to make sure we tie it off. And come to the very edge of the top of the ribbon. And I will remove this first pin because it's going to be in our way. And we're just going to sew along the top of the ribbon. Take your time with this. Don't get in too big of a hurry. And we'll take the next pin out. Continue along the top of the ribbon. All the way to the edge, and now we're going to secure this side as well. And we'll come down to the bottom edge of the ribbon, and we're going to do a seam all the way along that also. Very good. Now let's trim our thread. On the front and the back. Is that the one that's long? Okay, let's take a look and see how we did with this. I have a couple more threads to trim there. You can see how the yoke is now attached to the front of the dress. And we have that nice ribbon that covers our rough edge and makes it a little fancier, right? You can use whatever kind of ribbon you want. I grabbed some red because I could reach it pretty quickly. Another thing that you could use would be bias tape. You could use a big fat ribbon if you wanted to, just whatever kind you want, but I just think that looks nice there to cover that seam edge. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to attach our yoke to the bag. So let's take a look at this and see what we're doing. See if we need to change our pleats at all on the back side, or how well did we judge that? And actually, let's think about this for a moment. I think that we're going to want to connect the back together first, right? And then add our yoke to the top. I think that's what we're going to want to do here. Think about this for just a moment. And I think that we actually are going to want to make our pleats a little slimmer back, or a little, we want to bridge this gap, right? Make it a little smaller here. I think we have a little too much space there. So we're going to make our pleats a little bit wider, just like we did on the front. So let's go ahead and do that now. Sorry for the noise of that machine. I know that's not pleasant. pleats. Just a little bigger. Cut our threads. We want to do good finish work with our projects. And let's do the next one. Get that nicely lined up. Get all of our threads cut here. So we just made that a little more narrow, right? And let's do the other side. And do the next one. Thread. Oops, watch out, don't cut the fabric. We'd fix that too if we had to, but let's just not do that. All right, so we're getting closer here. I think what we're going to want to do now is go ahead and attach the two back sides together before we do our yoke, because we're going to want to hem this edge, right? And when we hem the edge, we're going to get this down to the right size so that we can tuck this in. Make sense? All right, let's do that. So to start, let's put our right sides together. So you can see what I'm doing here. Let's get our right sides together. And we're not going to sew this top part here together, but I'm going to pin it just so that the fabric stays straight. Just right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a seam like this, right up here like that, right? Okay, let's do that. And then just turn your fabric a little bit to go around the corner. And then reverse to seal off the seam. this out of the way. And let's just turn this inside out briefly so we can look at it, see how we're doing. Let me turn this so you can see. Sorry about that. All right, let me just bring this over here like this. So you can see we've attached the back together, right? So we've closed that seam up, and now we need to hem the top edge, right? And then once we do that, we'll be able to attach the back yoke onto the back of the dress. And at this point, be careful not to sew anything together that you're not meaning to. And I am going to, let me angle this a little bit, see if I can get a little better angle. There we go. I'm going to just take and pin this top or this edge like this, right? And we're going to make a seam. And then just make your fabric go at an angle so it kind of tapers down to the bottom edge. So that it's smooth. So if you look at the right side, you're not making a weird fold there. You want it just to taper down. You can see that. And let's go ahead and do a seam. So I'm going to want to do a seam where I come across the top like this so that that edge is secured, and then I'm going to seam down. All right, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do that on both sides. And then we're just going to seam right along the edge here, okay? Get rid of this pen so it's not in our way. Get rid of the next pen. And wash your fingers, don't sew yourself. And then reverse to tie out that seam. Cut our loose thread. Nice finish work. And now we're going to do the same thing on the other side, except I think we'll start at the bottom. And I'm actually going to flip the pins in the other direction so it's easier. It's always easier if the head of the pin is facing you when you're sewing. Every once in a while when I'm doing these patterns, I'll get a little confused on it, and then I just do whatever seems right, and so far they've always turned out. And once you get used to doing a few of these, it starts coming natural to you. Again, watch your fingers. And flip this and sew along the top. Okay. Let's get this loose thread there. Let's turn this inside out, or should I say right side out? It's already inside out. And let's look at attaching our back yoke. There we go. This is going to make a lot more sense now. So, can you see what I'm doing? Let's see, how can I adjust this angle a little bit? Sorry, I'm new to using this tripod, and it seems to be a little top heavy when I angle it too much. Okay, so I'm just going to hold this for a minute and show you what I'm going to do, and then pin it and show you how I pinned it. So it's going to be similar to the front yoke. We're just going to pin this edge of the fabric right here inside the yoke section, and then we'll be ready to seam it. And we're going to do that on both sides, so give me a moment here. And let's get that pinned. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with my tripod. Let me see if I can adjust this a little better. It's bendy. It's kind of like an octopus tripod, but it seems to tip really easily as well. Okay, I think you can just see what I'm doing. So let's go ahead and get this tucked in. And we can use more ribbon to finish off the rough edge on this as well, just like we did on the front, right? So it'll look nice and finished. So we're going to pin this in there. Let's try to get it nice and straight. So we have the same amount of fabric in the yoke on both sides. So we want it to hang right once we put it on our doll. Feels like it's about right. And definitely make sure you do it the same on both sides, right? You don't want it to be longer on one side and shorter on the other. And we can pin it and then take a look at it and adjust it if we need to. Let's get it roughly pinned in there to start. You kind of have to feel for the bump through the fabric to know how far you have it in there. I mean, I guess you could have actually marked the fabric also and then just slid this edge here to the mark to make sure you had it the same distance. That would work as well. But I am just tucking the dress into the yoke. That's working out really well. And then feeling for the thickness of the fabric to see if I have an even amount in on both ends, consistently through the length of the yoke. Okay, now let's just take a look at this so you can see what I've done. See how I have this pinned along here and pinned along here, and that looks like it's an even length. So I think we're ready to go ahead and sew this on. Let's do it. Love my tea. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to sew on the very edge. All right, so let's just get this position in our machine. I think upside down is going to be the easiest way. So let's turn the dress upside down so we can slide it along here. And make sure we have our arm facing folded the right direction. There we go. And we're just going to sew right along the edge. And I'll take this one pin out. backwards, and forwards. And then we'll go backwards again. And let's trim our thread. Bottom, don't forget the bottom. And let's get it on this other side too. I always want to practice doing nice finish work. It's one thing I learned. I took one sewing class as a child. I was 12, home economics. Do they even have that anymore in school? They taught you all kinds of things. You do a section on sewing, a section on cooking, just different kinds of stuff. I remember one section we did was about organizing your kitchen. And at the time, my family lived on a boat, and that was probably the most challenging thing for me because I had no idea how to organize a kitchen. All right, let's go backwards. Remove our pin. Remove another pin. Be sure to watch your fingers. We don't want to have any sewn fingers. Okay, let's trim our thread. Let's get it on the other side. And let's pull this out and let's make sure we got our seams all the way through. I think I have a thread in here that I missed. Maybe. Okay, you see what I'm doing here? All right, this side, it's sewn all the way through, both sides. And this side, we sewed all the way through as well. Let's go ahead and get some ribbon and let's go ahead and do some finish work here. And before I do that, let me just show you how we're doing here. There we go. Looks like we have a thread here I need to get off. But you can see how our yoke is going on really nicely. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. Let's get some ribbon. Let's cut 2 pieces about the same size, right? And we're going to do it like we did it the last time. We're just going to fold the ends over and pin it to our yoke. We're going to do the top and the bottom so we cover up that rough edge and make it look pretty. Make sure you get it folded over evenly so you hide the edge when you fold it over. And I'm going to sew from this direction, so I want the pin head facing me, right? It makes it so much easier. It's also easier if you don't have to repin stuff when you start sewing. Okay, let's pin that one more time. And let's pin the other one. Another thing you have to take into consideration when you're doing this is what direction you're going to have to sew based on how wide your sewing machine arm is, right? Because this is small doll clothing, so sometimes it's hard to figure out which way to tuck the fabric in to be able to sew in the direction you want to go in. So, and I think I'm going to sew this way also. So let's do it like this. Make sure we're getting it about the same distance. Let's go up a little higher with this. All right, and before we sew, let's just take a glance at this and make sure it looks reasonably even. Okay. Pretty good, I think. Let's go ahead and sew it on. We're going to sew the top and the bottom of the ribbon and the sides to make sure it's secured. And this is a little tricky because you're working with small garments, but we can do it. One thing to do is just make sure you're not sewing over part of a sleeve, part of the other yoke. Make sure you're only sewing through the fabric you want to sew through. You don't want to sew anything together that you don't want sewn together, because that's frustrating. If you're anything like me, if you make that kind of mistake, you got to get your seam ripper out and you have to get your glasses on. So let's just avoid that mistake. Right to the edge. So the same way. Take that pin out and flip it around. Just want to double check this edge. Yep, that's good. Sew the side. And let's trim our threads, make sure we get rid of all of our threads, right? We don't have any loose threads on here. Got that. All right, let's do the other side. Remove that needle. Double check, make sure you, when you turn this, you don't accidentally sew over any other part of the garment. All right, let's cut our threads. And let's see how we did. All right, you can see we got this on the back, and the right side looks good. Let's look at the other one. We got the back of it all nice and secured, and the right side looks good. Let's take a look at the garment, how it's shaping up. I think this is going to be pretty adorable. What do you think? So we have 2 more things left to do on this. We need to have some kind of closure on the back, right? So that when we put this on our doll, it stays together. And depending on the age of the child you have, you may want to do one or more things. One option is Velcro. That is the safest for small children because they're not going to be able to eat it. One of my favorite ways to connect this is with a modern iron hook. So let's come over here to our supplies. These right here is what I'm talking about. These are pretty awesome. And getting these on can be slightly tedious, but they work fabulous. Just takes a little bit of patience. So there's two parts to this. Let me let you see what this looks like. See right here? Keys right here, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we're going to use today. And so we're going to want to position this right so that this will hook over this edge right here. And that means we're going to have this on the back side of the fabric, like this. And we're going to have this other part on this side of the fabric. So getting these positioned on there initially can be a little tedious, but again, just take your time and go very slow. I'm going to use the button attachment on my sewing machine for this part of the project. So let's just dig that out of my little container over here. Got bobbins and other things in this little dish. Okay. We will start with the hook part, okay? Just to make this. Okay, first let's set it up to do the buttonhole. Right, so we're gonna take this foot off like this. We're gonna adjust our feed so it doesn't push the fabric along because we want it to stay stationary. And we're gonna change it to the buttonhole setting, or actually zigzag, because it doesn't actually have a true buttonhole setting. Zigzag is what does it. So that's number 4 on my machine. 2, 3, 4. And you're going to want to adjust your zigzag to fit. There's like 2 tiny holes here, 2 tiny holes here, and a hole here, right? So you'll just have to play with it to get that right. And so it's going to be positioned on the fabric like that. So let's put that part on first. Let's put the buttonhole foot on first. There we go. It's really easy to change attachments. There we go. And we're just going to put this hook on the very edge of the fabric. And this really is the most tedious part of this project. Be careful, watch your fingers. And I'm just going to do it by hand initially because I need to adjust the width. Make sure I have that right because we don't want our needle to come down on our hook, right? Okay, and once you get it adjusted, then you can turn the machine on just very slowly, right? I'm going to get this in really good. All right, very good. Lift the needle up, pull it out, trim your thread. Trim out a little better here. And let's do the other side. That wasn't so bad now, was it? Again, let's get it lined up by hand first. We don't want to accidentally hit the hook with our needle because that would really necessitate changing the needle. Very good. Lift the needle up. Don't want any broken needles. I find it's good to have a lot of needles on hand. For a while, I had a brand of needles that when I was sewing, they kept breaking. And actually, that was more on my embroidery machine than my sewing machine. But one thing's for sure, when you're doing a project, you got to have needles, and sometimes they do break. And I found during COVID that it was a great idea to have some extras of this kind of stuff, right? Okay, this hole is going to be a little more tedious because it's just one instead of two. So let's line this up here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it go to the side. Oh, it doesn't want to do it. Let's see. Get a little bigger. Well, you can always manipulate the fabric a little bit too, right? Okay, let's make it bigger. A little bigger. There we go. We're just going to do this by hand. Although I have it lined up, let's just finish it with the machine. Okay, lift the needle. And let's cut all of our threads here. All right, so you can see how I have that sewn on the top. Now we're going to want to put the other one, which will be easier. This little guy right here, right there on the other side, right? And just kind of like look at your fabric like this and see where it lines up so you can position it properly. And let's do this one. We're almost done, folks. Other than hemming the bottom, that's the easiest part. Let's make that a little smaller. There we go. Trim our threads, and let's do the bottom. Again, make sure that you don't accidentally sew over any other fabric that you're not wanting to sew on, because I've done it before. Everybody does at some point. And let's trim our threads. And let's see how this lines up. You see, that just went on nice. We'll see the inside. You can see how that kind of hooks over there. And I see a loose thread. There we go. Let's go ahead and hem the bottom of our dress. And I think we're going to do an inch. Be sure it has like an inch allowance on this. Get rid of any loose threads you see. There we go. This thing right here, this is really fabulous. I have another one someplace, but you can just slide this and it makes it easier for you to mark so you have an even distance all the way around, right? Let's get our pens and let's turn it inside out. It'll be the easiest way. And let's just fold it up an inch. And if you use your little ruler, this is where I definitely recommend using a ruler. Just makes it all turn out nice. And we'll just pin it. See what I'm doing? I'm still learning, getting used to using the tripod, so I appreciate you bearing with me while I'm doing this. It's kind of a new experience for me. I've used it a little bit for cooking projects, and I'm trying to learn to use it with sewing. And with the sewing, it's a little harder for me to make sure that you can see what I'm doing. So thank you for your patience. And I hope you're enjoying this content. If you enjoy this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe. Definitely going to be having more sewing projects in the future. Definitely some more doll dresses. If you saw my sewing area when I panned around to let you look at our puppy, I have a lot of fabric for a reason. Definitely enjoy sewing. So far I've made myself a dress and a skirt and some shorts. And I've made my husband a pair of shorts and a couple of really nice dress shirts for bowling. It's a bowler. And I'd like to make more clothing for myself and another shirt for my husband. Especially now that I'm getting more competent with my sewing. I enjoy sharing it with you if you want to join me. And when it comes to sewing, I do follow a pattern for clothing. I've tried taking clothes apart that I like and using those as a pattern, but that can be a little bit hard. You have to be sure you add in enough of a seam allowance, probably about 1.5 inches. I don't think I'm quite skilled enough to do that very well, but who knows, maybe I'll learn at some point. So what I like to do when I'm doing a hem is I like to do 2 seams. I just think it looks nice, plus it holds the hem in place. I need to look at this edge just a little bit here. Let's go ahead and pin this, and let's see how it is on the other side as well while we're at it. All right, well, we are ready to start sewing. And I am going to sew from the top side. And the first seam I'm going to make is going to be at the bottom edge of the fabric. And oh, let's change our foot back and move our feed so that it pushes the fabric along. And we'll change our stitch back to a normal sewing stitch. And I need a drink of my tea. Okay, you can see what I'm doing. And let's see. I want to get close to the edge here, so this part goes really fast. And now let's just slide it over and let's just do one more seam. Actually, let's cut this seam first. Or not cut the seam, but the loose thread. And let's cut our threads and let's remove our pins. I find if you have a double seam, it just makes the hem stay better. Get all the pins out. Don't want to leave any pins in here on accident. Okay, so this is what this looks like finished. And you could accessorize it a little bit more if you wanted. Let's go ahead and tuck the shirt in to it that goes with this outfit. And you can see on this shirt, I actually used Velcro for this here. Velcro worked really well. Let's just tuck it in. So what do you think? I think it's kind of cute. I hope you enjoyed sewing with me. McCall's American Girl doll outfit. Thanks for watching.